திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். புழியர்கோன் வெப்பொழித்த புகிலியர்கோன் கடல் போற்றி, ஆழிமிசை கல்மிதப்பில் அணைந்த பிரான் அடி போற்றி, வாழி திரு நாவலூர் வன்றொண்டர் பதம் போற்றி, ஊழிமலி திருவாதவூரர் திருத்தாள் போற்றி. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். So today we are continuing the story of Sundarar, and last time we had met, we had seen up to some stage in Sundarar's life. We had seen that we went on a temple trip, and he got gold in Vrudachalam, and then he came to Thiruvarur, and then he picked up the gold from the Thiruvarur temple tank. We had seen up to that point. Now we are going to continue his life from that point onwards. So Sundarar, he was living with Paravayar, the wife, his wife in Thiruvarur, and as he was there for some time, and then he wanted to go visit other temples of Shiva, and he wanted to go to the temples on the northern part of the Tamil-speaking region. And so he started from Thiruvarur and started going further north from there. And if you look at the map, you will get an idea. From Thiruvarur, you go about 50 kilometers, you will come to Mayiladurai, and from there you go another 30 kilometers north, you will come to Sirgari. So he visits various temples on the way and comes to Sirgari. And Sirgari is the birthplace of Thiruñāna Sambandar, and where he lived for a long time. So Sundarar doesn't want to step inside that place, because he considers that the holy place, and he doesn't want to walk on that holy place. So he goes around the Sirgari town and then worships Shiva from outside. And of course Shiva gives him darshanam and listens to his padhigam and all that. And then Sundarar goes further east from Sirgari. If you look at the map, from Sirgari you can go another let's say something like 8 or 10 kilometers east, or 15 kilometers east. There is a region where there are other temples. So he wanted to go to a temple in a place called Kurugavur. Tirukkurugavur is the name of the place. And he goes there, and he and his entourage, right? They are all walking. And as you can imagine, when Sundarar goes, he will have a entourage, right? There will be other devotees. Some devotees will be coming with him on this part of this trip. There will be other servants, the cooks, the other people who take care of his needs, and so there will be a group of people who will go with him. So they are all going towards Kurugavur, and probably they had darshanam at some temple, and they were walking to Kurugavur, and it was getting hot and getting closer to lunchtime, and they were still on the way to Kurugavur. So the way it works is that they will go set up camp somewhere, and the cooks will prepare food, and then they will eat and all that. But they are in between on the way to Kurugavur, and probably they haven't had the time to go to Kurugavur and set up camp and cook and all. It will take another 2-3 hours. So they were all hungry. So Sundarar was hungry, and Shiva cannot bear to make Sundarar suffer. So Shiva takes the form of a Brahmana and sets up a Annadanam stall. In those days there will be for the wayfarers, right? When people are going from place to place, on the side of the main road, there will be people who will be doing some charity work, right? They will be having free water or free buttermilk or those kind of things to help the wayfarers. So like that, Shiva, in the form of a Brahmana, sets up a big shaded area. He sets up a pandal, and he is there sitting there with curd rice and a couple of other things and food, and he was waiting. And when Sundarar and his team comes along, he invites them and he says, you guys look very hungry. Why don't you eat here? And then he offers them food and water and all that. So the Sundarar and his entourage, they have a hearty meal and drink water and all that, And if you remember, if you have been walking for a few hours in hot sun in India, and then you have a heavy meal and then water, drink water and all that, and it's a cool, nice shaded place with gentle breeze, automatically you will feel sleepy. So Sundarar and his entourage, they all lie down and go to sleep. And after maybe an hour or so, they wake up. Sundarar wakes up and finds that there is no more pandal there. There is no brahmana, there is no annadanam stall, there nothing. It's all like open area. He wakes up and then only he realizes it was Shiva who came like this and gave him food. So he was so thrilled that Shiva took such a pity on him and came here to feed him. He sings one padhigam and goes to that Kurugavur temple and worships Shiva there. And then he starts on his way further north. He comes to Chidambaram and worships Shiva in Chidambaram, and then he goes on his way. He comes to different places, right? From Chidambaram, he is continuing his journey north. So he comes to various places, and he comes to Tirukazhkundram. Tirukazhkundram is a temple which is near Chengalpet. So those you have been to this region, Chengalpet is something like 50-60 kilometers, 60 kilometers south of Chennai, and Tirukazhkundram is maybe about 10-15 kilometers east of Chengalpet towards the coast. So he comes to Tirukazhkundram and worships Shiva there, and then he proceeds further on his trip. He comes to a place called Tirukachur. Tirukachur is about 10 kilometers or so north of Chengalpet. And it's happened that Sundarar had maybe walked faster, or maybe he started earlier, whatever. So Sundarar had come to Tirukachur, but his entourage, right, they were still on their way. They have not yet come. And again, as you know, the entourage has to come, set up camp, and then make food and all that. But it is already getting close to lunchtime, and Sundar was hungry. And again, as you know from Tirukurugavur incident, Shiva cannot bear to see Sundarar suffer. So Shiva again, he plays all kinds of games with Sundarar as a friend, right? So Shiva comes in the form of a Brahmana there, and looks at Sundarar, who was sitting in the mandapam near the temple. He says, oh, you look very tired and hungry. You stay here. I will go get some bhiksha and from the agraharam here, and I will come and give you food. Then Shiva, in the form of a Brahmana, goes to the local agraharam streets and gets bhiksha from several houses, and then brings it back and gives to Sundarar, who is sitting in that mandapam there, right? So Sundarar eats the food and then looks around, and then he doesn't find him. Then Sundar realizes that it was Shiva who came as a Brahmana and went around the agraharam and begged for food and came and fed him. And he goes into the temple there, Tirukachur. There's a big temple there, Alakoil. He goes to Tirukachur temple and sings a padhigam, praising Shiva's glory and his kindness and all that. Then he goes on his temple tour. He goes from there he goes towards Kanchipuram. In Kanchipuram, he worships, and then next to Kanchipuram, Ekambareswara temple, there's another smaller temple called Onakandan. He goes there, and then he sings padhigam in Onakandan, seeking some money, right? Because Sundarar, because he is going with the entourage, and he needs money, right, to take care of his entourage as well. And so he probably ran out of money, so he goes to the temple and sings a very wonderful padhigam. It's padhigam, which is what we will typically call as a nindastuti. Basically the padhigam, he will be sort of disparaging Shiva, but he is actually praising him. To give you an example, right, he will say, "Oh Shiva, you are what do you have? You are wearing a tiger skin. You are not having any great clothing, right? You are wearing just a tiger skin, and you are wearing snakes as garlands, and you are dancing in the cremation ground, and you have got all the ash smeared all over your body. You are such a god. What will your devotees get? What can you give to your devotees?" That kind of a thing, right? He is praising him, but as if he is mocking him. That kind of a wonderful nindastuti padhigam he sings there, and of course we can imagine that he got gold after that padhigam. And then he goes on other salams in that Kanchipuram area, and comes to Kalahasti. Goes north from there, comes to Kalahasti, and he sings padhigam in Kalahasti. And as I mentioned in some other story as well, in those days Kalahasti seems to have been some kind of a limit to which they will go on pilgrim tours, and they will did not go further north from there. I don't know, it's maybe because the further north from there is a region where it is dry and inhospitable, or maybe not having good governance in those days, we don't know. So they did not proceed on foot beyond Kalahasti, but they did sing padhigams on some of the salams further north. So Sundarar has sung a padhigam on Sri Sailam, for example, but he sang from Kalahasti itself. He didn't walk to Sri Sailam. Mentally he worshipped Sri Sailam from Kalahasti and sang a padhigam on Sri Sailam. And then he also sang about Kedaram. Kedaram is Kedaranath. So Kedaranatham, they have sung padhigams. So Sundarar has sung padhigam on Kedaram as well. But these are all from Kalahasti. They didn't go to specific places beyond that. Then from there he comes southeast towards the coast, and he comes to a place called Tiruvottriyur. Tiruvottriyur is about let's say, you can say it's about 15-20 kilometers north of Chennai. So in today's Chennai city, it is probably, you can say, it is a northern suburb, but in those days it's a major place. And if you have not been to Tiruvottriyur, next time you go to Chennai, you should plan to go to Tiruvottriyur. It is the biggest temple in Chennai region in terms of area wise. Mylapore is a big temple, but Tiruvottriyur is much bigger. And also Tiruvottriyur is a very ancient town. What we call as Chennai is a modern city which came up in the last 300-400 years with the British making it a big city. But historically, the towns that were existing on the coast, where Mylapore was a very ancient town, similarly Tiruvottriyur is a very ancient town. And Tiruvottriyur is very well known olden days. It was like Kanchipuram is a center of learning. Tiruvottriyur was a center of learning. So it is that Salapuranam and the local legends, etc., right? They cover that even Panini's Vyakaranam was composed in Tiruvottriyur. And So Sundarar comes to Tiruvottriyur, and the Tiruvottriyur, the Mulavar, the main Sannidhi, is a ant hill, right? So that is the thing. In some sthalams, the main deity is in the form of an ant hill. So like Thiruvarur, main deity is an ant hill. Tiruvottriyur, the main deity is an ant hill. And what they do is that they put some metal casing around that ant hill, and that's what they worship. And they don't do any abhishekam to the main deity because it's an ant hill. So what they do in the Kartika Masam, after the Kartika Deepam, they open the Kavacham, and then for 3 days they do a special Taila-abhishekam to the ant hill. That's very unique thing. Once a year, right? For 3 days you can have darshanam of the main Swami, which is in the form of an ant hill, without the Kavacham. And then they will put the Kavacham back, and the rest of the year you will only view and have darshanam with the Kavacham. Anyway, so that's about the temple. So Sundarar goes there and worships Shiva there, and then he is walking around the prakaram. So as he was walking around, in one of the mandapams there on the prakaram, a young woman opens a curtain and hands over several flower garlands and other flowers to some of the other temple workers. And then she closes the curtain and goes behind the curtain. That's basically, it's a mandapam where they are making garlands for the various deities of the temple. So it so happened that she opened the curtain and peeked outside and gave these garlands to the temple workers, and that's the time when Sundarar was walking in that prakaram. And Sundarar looks at this girl, and the girl also looks at Sundarar, and instantly in Sundarar's heart springs a desire for that girl. And he is wondering, why am I finding myself attracted to this girl? Because then he knows his story, right? His Kailasam thing and all that. Maybe she is the second girl that I am supposed to get married. That's why my heart is going after her. So then he comes and he prays to Shiva, "Oh Shiva, I want to marry this girl. Grant me that." So that night, Shiva appears in front of Sundarar and says, "Oh Sundara, don't worry. I will get you married to that girl." Then that night, Shiva goes in the dream of that girl. But before I do all that, I should tell you the story of that girl, right? So let me retrace back a few steps. So he looks at the girl, he gets attracted. So then he asks others, right, his entourage, who is this girl? And the local people tell him the story of that girl. So her name is Sangiliyar. She is the daughter of a landlord from a place called nAyanAr, about 10-12 kilometers west-northwest from Tiruvottriyur is a place called nAyanAr. And there was a farming family, and her father is known as a nAyanAr Kidar. Kidar means somebody who is a farmer, like that kind of a lineage, and the nAyanAr is the name of the village. So we don't know her father's real name. All we know is refer to him as nAyanAr Kidar, the Kidar from nAyanAr. And so she was born as a girl to them, and as she was growing up, she reached the marriageable age in those days, let's say 14 years old, For girls, when they are 14 years old or so, they will marry them at the time. And so when she has reached that marriageable age, they were talking one day, the father and mother, our girl has reached this marriageable age. Now we should find a suitable boy from our compatible families and get her married soon. And this girl Sangili was listening to her parents talking about them planning to start the process to get her married. At that instant, she feels that that she is by nature, right, because of her background, she is from birth she is an ardent Shiva devotee. So she feels intuitively that I should marry only a Shiva devotee, and the way my parents are talking, they are going to get me married to some other guy, and that is not going to be compatible for what I need to do. And she was overcome with emotion and she faints. And suddenly, the parents are talking about her marriage, and this girl who was standing nearby suddenly faints and falls on the ground. So they both rush to her, and then they, sprinkle water and all that, and wake her up, and then ask her, what happened. She says, I will marry only a Shiva devotee, and so you should not pursue any more the talk of getting me married to anybody. I will not marry anybody else. So parents are shocked, what to do. This girl is like this. So they don't pursue any further marriage proposals for her, or they don't talk anything about that. But sometime later, from a nearby village somewhere else, right, another guy of their lineage, he wants to marry this girl, so he sends his family members or other elders to Sangili's parents and say, they express his desire to marry her and ask for their approval or permission and all that. So they come, and those elders come and talk to Sangili's parents. This boy is here in this town, in this village, and he is such and such a boy. He is a nice guy, and he is young, he is wealthy, whatever, right? And we are interested in finding out if you are interested in marrying your daughter to him. So they are saying all this, and then Sangili's parents, right? They know what has, based on what has happened previously. So they sort of tell him that we are not thinking of. They just give some other excuse. They don't tell the real reason, but they say some other made-up reason. We already got something else going on, or maybe we are not thinking of marrying her for another year or something. They gave some excuse and send them back. And then a couple of weeks later, they get the information that this boy who was seeking Sangili's hand in marriage, that boy has suddenly died of something. So the nAyanAr and his wife, they are very worried. Maybe there's something special about our girl. If she doesn't want to marry anybody, and this guy on his own sent some people to marry her, and then now he is dead. So we don't want this kind of fate to happen to anybody else. So they announce to their community and to their village and all that, this is the scene. She is not going to marry anybody else, so don't ask for her hand in marriage. They announce that, and then they set up a place near Tiruttoṇḍattogai temple where she could stay and worship Shiva and do service to Shiva in the Tiruttoṇḍattogai temple. So that is the background of Sangili. So this is what they tell him, and then immediately he knows, Sundarar knows that, hey, that this is the girl that I am destined to marry. So he asks Shiva, and that night Shiva comes and tells him, Sundara, don't worry, I will get you married to her. Then that night Shiva goes in the dream of Sangili, and in the dream he says, oh Sangili, like you, Sundarar is a great devotee of mine, and he wants to marry you. And then Sangiliyar, it's all happening in her dream. So Sangiliyar tells Shiva, "Oh Lord, I'll be, as you say, I'll be happy to do that. But, whenever somebody says I'm happy to do this, but the but has a big thing, right? So she says, but he's already married in Tiruvarur. He has a wife there, and if he marries me here, after some time he will leave me and go to Tiruvarur. What will I do in that case?" So Shiva tells her, "Don't worry. He will make you a promise that he will never leave you. Don't worry." So she tells Shiva, if so, I will happily marry him. Then Shiva comes to Sundarar and tells Sundarar, "Oh Sundara, she will marry you, but there is something that you have to do before that." Sundarar says, "What is it I should do? I will happily do it, whatever it is." So Shiva says, "Sundara, you have to make her a promise that you will not leave Tiruttoṇḍattogai." If you say, if you have to make a promise that you will not leave her, you will not leave Tiruttoṇḍattogai, then she will marry you. Now Sundarar is thinking, I have to go visit various salams. I have to sing your glory in various salams. How can I spend the rest of my life in Tiruttoṇḍattogai? That is not practical. That's not going to happen. So he tells Shiva, when I make the promise, I don't want you to be in the Garbhagraham, Sannidhi. I want you to go stay in the Magidamaram, the Magidam tree in the Prakaram. That's where I want you to be when I make the promise. Because Sundara is already planning, right, that he is going to make a false promise. So that's how he is thinking. And that's what he tells Shiva. And Shiva says, "Okay, if you say so, I will do that. Don't worry." So job done. Sundara goes to sleep. But what Shiva does is that he goes back to Sangiliyar's dream. She tells her in the dream, "Oh Sangili, when you make the promise, I will be in the, ask him to make the promise in front of Magidamaram." That's all he says, Shiva says. Remember, make sure that you get the promise in front of the Magidam tree in the Prakaram. Shiva says that and vanishes. So Sangili wakes up from her dream. And then there are other companions, right? She is like other companions, servants or other companions. So she tells her companions, "This is what Shiva told me, that he came in my dream, he asked me to marry Sundarar, and he also said that when he will make a promise, make sure that the promise is done in the Magidam tree, in front of the Magidam tree in the Prakaram." So they all, next day morning, Sundarar is already in the temple waiting for Sangiliyar to come. So Sangiliyar and her companions come into the temple, and Sundarar approaches her and says, "Come, I will make you the promise." But Sangiliyar doesn't say anything. She sort of, like a shy girl, she goes inside, and then her companions talk to Sundarar. This is a tradition of those days, right? The girl will not directly speak. It is her companions, they will talk on her behalf. So they tell him that she doesn't want the promise to be done in the Sannidhi. She wants the promise to be done in front of the Magidam tree in the Prakaram. So now Sundarar is shocked, right? Because he wanted the promise to be a false promise, so he doesn't want to make the promise in front of Shiva. So he explicitly had requested Shiva to be in the Magdam tree when he makes the promise. Now Sangiliyar is asking him to come to Magdam tree to make the promise, but he is stuck. So he reluctantly goes with them to the Magdam tree in the Prakaram, and he goes around the Magdam tree 3 times, and then promises solemnly that, I will not leave Sangili, I will not leave you, I will not leave Tiruttoṇḍattogai. This is my solemn promise, and all that he promises. And then, Sangiliyar is satisfied because he has made the promise. And so Shiva then tells in the dream of other people of Tiruttoṇḍattogai, hey, get these 2 guys married. Get these 2 people married. So the village elders, they get together. They organize the wedding. Sundarar and Sangiliyar are married. And you can imagine, right? So Sundarar and Sangiliyar newly married. So they spend a few months happily. And then the seasons change, right? Maybe I don't know when Sundarar came to Tiruttoṇḍattogai, maybe 4 months had gone by, or maybe 6 months had gone by, I don't know. Then the seasons change and the spring is starting. Spring season is coming. And then Sundarar is missing Tiruttoṇḍattogai heavily, because Tiruttoṇḍattogai Swami Tyagarajar is his favorite, and his name Aruran is named after that Swami of Tiruvallur. And in Panguni Masam, Uttara Nakshatram, there's a major festival in Tiruvallur. So there's a lot of devotees come, there's a big festival, and a lot of festivities will happen, and a lot of pujas will be done, and it'll be like, major thing. And Sundarar is thinking about that because he had lived in Tiruvallur for some years, right? So he had seen all that, and his heart wants to be in Tiruvallur for this Panguni Uttaram festival. But he is bound by his promise to stay in Tiruttoṇḍattogai for the rest of his life. So he is torn. And one day, he decides that he will leave Tiruttoṇḍattogai. So he goes to Tiruttoṇḍattogai temple, prays to the Shiva there, and then sets out on his journey to Tiruttoṇḍattogai. And then, as soon as he left Tiruttoṇḍattogai, the borders of Tiruttoṇḍattogai, right, the town border, immediately Sundarar loses eyesight in both eyes. You can imagine how he would have felt. He was probably like, let's say, 22 or 24 years old, right? And you are hale and hearty, and you are full of strength, and you are such a great friend of Shiva. And such a person, as he is walking along the road, in an instant lose eyesight in both eyes. He couldn't bear that pain. The fact that he has been punished by Shiva for breaking his promise. So he starts crying. And from there, he sings on padhigam. Azhukku Meigodu is the name of the padhigam. On the Lord of Tiruttoṇḍattogai, he sings the padhigam and says, "Oh Lord of Tiruttoṇḍattogai, I have made a mistake, but still, I am. You should not punish me like this. Please give me my eyesight back." He sings a padhigam, but Shiva is not giving him his eyesight back. Then, with the help of other people in his entourage, he, as a blind man, he is walking. He comes to a place called Tiruvandambakam, which is one of the northwest suburbs of Chennai. And he comes to that Tiruvandambakam village, and he goes to the temple there. And then sorry, before he goes to Thiruvambakam, he goes to some place called tillai-vāḻ, which is near Ambattur and which is the western suburb, and he sings a padhigam there, and Shiva doesn't restore his eyesight, so he continues on his journey. He comes to Thiruvambakam and he sings padhigam, and whenever Sundarar sings padhigams, whenever Sundarar prays, Shiva will appear, will respond. But here he is singing padhigam and Shiva is not responding. Then in he asks, "Oh Shiva, I have been pleading like this for you, and you are not saying anything. Are you in the temple or not?" Because he can't see, right? So he's asking, "Are you in the temple or not? Why are you not replying?" Then Shiva says, "Yeah, we are in the temple only. You keep going," and he gives him a walking stick. So in an instant, Sundarar gets a walking stick, and then he comes out, and later on, right? Maybe later that afternoon or later that evening, he's recalling this event in the company of other devotees, and he is telling them, this is what happened. He sings a padhigam, and in the padhigam he says, when I asked him, "Oh Swami, are you in the temple or not?" he simply replied, "I'm inside. You keep going." And then he goes to other sthalams and keeps praying for Shiva for forgiveness. Finally, he comes to Kanchipuram. He comes to Kanchipuram and then goes to Ekambareswara temple and prays. And there, after I don't know, maybe several weeks of suffering, Shiva restores eyesight on his left eye. And you can imagine, right? If you don't have eyesight, both eyes are blind, and after a few weeks, suddenly you get eyesight in one eye. Now you can see the world again. What a major relief. So he sings one wonderful padhigam, "Alandan Ugandu Amadu Seidane," in Kanchipuram. It's a wonderful padhigam. And then he comes on his, continues Salayatra, and he comes, he goes to other temples and sings various padhigams in various temples. And in between, he suddenly got some kind of skin disease. His whole skin becomes discolored and black, and all that happens. Its natural color changes and the skin gets discolored and all that. And then he comes to a temple called Tiruttoṇḍattogai, which is called, it's a temple which is in between Kumbakonam and Mayiladurai. He comes to that place, and there he prays to the Lord, and the Lord says, take a dip in the temple tank and you will be cured. So he takes a dip in the temple tank in Tiruttoṇḍattogai, and his skin disease is cured. Then he continues his return to Thiruvarur. He visits other sthalams and finally comes to Thiruvarur. He goes straight to the temple and sings a wonderful padhigam. He says, it must have been several months, right, from Tiruvuttur near Chennai, visiting all these sthalams and coming to Thiruvarur. So if you come straight, it is about 350 kilometers, but you would have gone, various sthalams, and every sthalam you would have stayed 1 day, 2 days, whatever, right? So it would have been, let's say, maybe a couple of months before he came to Thiruvarur, right? So he still have eyesight in only one eye. So he goes to inside the Thiruvarur temple and sings a wonderful padhigam. Meeladimai umakke aalai pirare vendade. That's the starting phrase of this thing. Basically, which says, I am your permanent slave. And when I am crying, I'm crying the fact that I'm crying and I'm seeking your help, blessing, grace, and forgiveness for my eyesight, and you are not doing it. So in that he sings in a very unique tone, right? Oh Shiva, you want my eye? Keep it. Be happy. That kind of thing, he was so dejected that Shiva did not yield to his pleading for so many weeks and so many, maybe several months. He says, you don't want to give me an eye back? You want to keep my eyesight? Keep it and enjoy it. Be happy. That is the tone of that padhigam. So he sings 12 songs in that padhigam, and at the end of this padhigam, Shiva is pleased, and he restores eyesight in the right eye also. So now Sundarar has got eyesight on both eyes. So he's so ecstatic. He dances. Tears of joy flow down his eyes. And then he wants to go to his first wife's place, right? Paravayar, who lives in Thiruvarur. But in the meantime, what had happened is that some of his entourage, they had gone to Paravayar's house. And Paravayar had already knows about the fact that Sundarar had gone to Tiruvallur and he got married to another girl there, right? That information has already come. So Paravayar is highly upset with Sundarar. How dare he do this? When I'm here, his wife, how dare he go and marry another girl? So she tells the entourage, you guys cannot come into this house anymore, and you also go tell your master that he is also not welcome in this house. He cannot step here. So he cannot step inside. So the entourage goes to the Sundarar who is in the temple and tells him, sir, this is how madam has told us. Now Sundarar is wondering how to pacify Paravayar. So he seeks the help of other village elders. Thiruvarur is a big town. He seeks the help of other elders, and tells them that, hey, this is what the story is. My wife is upset with me. He is angry with me. I want your help. Can you go and pacify her and do that? So the village elders, maybe 3 or 4 of them, who are highly respected in Thiruvarur, they come to Paravayar's house. They meet Paravayar and try to reason out with her. He is such a nice person. He is a great person, and all these things. And you should not be angry with him. But Paravayar is steadfast. She says, I am not going to let him inside here, and I don't want to talk about this anymore. If he comes here, remember that I will lie. I will kill myself. So the village elders come back to Sundarar and they tell him, this is what Paravayar is telling. We have tried our best. We are not able to help. Now Sundarar is wondering, what to do now. Sundarar is eager, desperate to pacify Paravayar and return to her house. Now, as a last resort, he prays to Shiva. And of course, Shiva appears in front of him and he prays to, asks Shiva, hey, oh Shiva, Paravayar is angry with me. Please help me. Can you go and pacify her? So Shiva says, don't worry, I will do that for you. Now, this is friendship. So Shiva goes along with this, Parivaram, and he goes but when he goes to Paravayar's house, he doesn't go as Shiva. He goes like a Archaka of the Thiruvarur temple. So he goes there as a Gurukul, Shivacharya, and then it is already late night, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that in the night. So he goes and stands in front of the house and he calls out, "Oh Paravai, open the door." Then Paravayar comes and opens the door and finds the priest of the Thiruvarur temple standing there, one of the priests. She knows that priest very well. She says, sir, what is this? Why are you coming to my house at this late night hour? What is the reason? Then that Shiva in the form of the priest, right, tells her, I heard that you are angry with Sundarar, but Sundaran is a very nice guy, and I know he got married in Thiruvallur, but you shouldn't make the big deal out of this. Now that he's come back to you, you should be happy. Something like that. I'm just making up some words, but you can imagine. Shiva, that he tries to pacify her, and but then Paravayar is still angry. Sir, this is not appropriate for you to come and talk about our personal life at this kind of things. Let me warn you, don't get involved in our personal life. Go back. Don't talk about this anymore. Don't lose your respect. Something like that. She curtly speaks to him and goes inside. So then Shiva comes back to Sundarar, who is probably staying in the mandapam in the Thiruvallur temple. When he goes to Sundarar, he goes like Shiva, not like the temple priest form. And then Sundarar is all eager, right? When Shiva goes to do something, that will be done. So he's very eagerly awaiting Shiva's return. So Shiva returns to him, and Shiva says, Shiva tells him that, oh Sundara, this is not that easy, I thought I could get it done, but she's not yielding here. What can I do? Sundara says, what? You go tell her that you want her to let me in, and she refuses? How is that possible? Well, what happened? Then Shiva tells, I went there as a temple priest, but this is what happened. Then he says, what to do? How can I do this? And of course, Shiva says, okay, don't worry, I will go again. So Shiva comes as a messenger for the second time in the night. So maybe it is like midnight now. But this time, Shiva comes in his own form. So he appears as Shiva to Paravayar. So Paravayar is thrilled to have darshanam of Shiva. And Shiva tells her that, you should not be angry with Sundaran, and you should take him back. And Paravayar says, oh Lord, if you come and tell me this, how can I say no? So she's happy. Then Shiva goes and tells Sundara. Sundara is happy. So Sundar comes to Paravayar's house. They both are happy again. And this is, one of the major highlights of Sundarar's friendship with Shiva. But this news that Sundarar sent Shiva as a messenger to his wife to pacify her so that she will let him in. This news spread around the area, right? And there was another great Shiva devotee, EyarkOn kalikkAma. He is one of the 63 nayanmars. We have seen his story before. He married the daughter of Manakanjara nayanar, who is another of 63 nayanmar devotees. So this EyarkOn kalikkAma, he heard this and he was very, pained to hear this. A devotee sends Shiva as a messenger to pacify his wife so that he can go back with her. What kind of a devotee is he? How dare he do this? Does he not have any sense? So he's fuming. So EyarkOn kalikkAma nayanar is so angry with Sundarar for what he made Shiva do. And so he says, I don't want to see Sundaran again. If I see him, I will kill him. So he's sort of that wild and angry with him. And this obviously, this news spreads and comes to Sundarar's ears. So Sundarar is saying, goes to Shiva and says, oh Shiva, EyarkOn kalikkAma is such a great devotee of yours, and he is angry with me. Please, I don't want him to be angry with me. Make him friends with me again. So Shiva says, don't worry, I will give him Sulai disease, and you can go and cure him of the Sulai disease and become friends again. And so immediately, so Sundarar was happy that he will become friends with kalikkAma, EyarkOn kalikkAma again. And at that instant, EyarkOn kalikkAma gets the Sulai disease in his stomach. Right? Remember, this is Tirunavukkarasar also had this Sulai disease. This is we don't know what exactly it is, but it is a very, very terrible stomach pain, unbearable stomach pain. And that unbearable stomach pain immediately comes to EyarkOn kalikkAma nAyanAr. And he doesn't know what happened. Suddenly, I was fine yesterday, but today I'm having this severe stomach pain. And he is struggling, suffering, and is, then Shiva, as an Ashariri, tells him, oh, EyarkOn kalikkAma, Sundarar will come and cure you of this stomach disease, don't worry. Now, EyarkOn kalikkAma is even more distressed. I got this stomach ailment, unbearable stomach pain, Sulai disease, that's one thing. But Lord has told me that Sundarar has to come and cure this. What a dilemma for me. Which is worse? Having this Sulai disease is worse, or having it cured by the Sundaran is worse? Which is worse? Because he is so upset with Sundarar. And at the same time, Shiva has told Sundarar that, hey, EyarkOn kalikkAma has got the Sulai disease now, you go and cure it. So Sundarar starts on his journey to the place where EyarkOn kalikkAma is. Let's say it's maybe 50-60 kilometers away, right? I don't know the exact place, but let's say it's 50-60 kilometers away. So it will take 2-3 days walking to get there. And so Sundarar starts on his trip to EyarkOn kalikkAma's place. And then, let's say Sundarar was, let's say, a few hours away. He sends a messenger ahead of his arrival to EyarkOn kalikkAma's house to tell them that Sundarar is on his way and he will be here in another few hours. So that, and then as soon as this messenger came and told this message, EyarkOn kalikkAma is even more upset. Now Sundarar is coming to his house, and when somebody comes to your house, you have to welcome him. You cannot say, don't enter my house. Now, if he comes, he is going to cure this Sulai disease. I don't want my Sulai disease to be cured by Sundarar. I would rather die. So what he did was that he takes out a sword and cuts his stomach and commits suicide and dies. So this happened inside the bedroom, let's say. And so they are all sad, his wife and his family, they are all sort of sad. But before that, Sundarar is going to come in another 1 hour. What to do? So his wife, EyarkOn kalikkAma's wife, we don't know her name. She is a great Shiva devotee. Remember the fact that when Manakanjarar had, when on the day of her wedding, when she was going to marry EyarkOn kalikkAma, Shiva comes as a Mahavirati and seeks this girl's hair for his Panchavati, the sacred thread made of hair. For that he seeks her hair, and her father Manakanjara nAyanAr, without hesitation, cuts off her hair and gives it to that Shiva devotee, which is Shiva. So a girl who was willing to forego her hair on the day of her wedding, that kind of a great girl. Now she is the wife of this great Shiva devotee, EyarkOn kalikkAma. So she makes up her mind. She tells her servants, close that bedroom door, decorate all our house. Let's welcome Sundarar. So when Sundarar comes, everybody is very happy. They give him proper welcome, and they welcome and make him, offer him a seat, and offer him whatever drink, water, whatever the normal upacharam that they do. So they are all, as if nothing has happened. Everybody is, normal, happy to see him in this place. That kind of a happy face they all have. And Sundara says, I am anxious. I want to see EyarkOn kalikkAma. I heard that he has got Sulai disease. I want to see him. And his wife says, no, don't worry, sir. Everything is normal. There's absolutely no problem. Everything is fine. He's just sleeping now. I don't want to disturb him, but that's fine. She was trying to somehow manage, manage the situation, and after half an hour, Sundara will go away, and we can take care of things like that. But Sundarar, because of Lord's guidance, Sundarar feels the urge. He wants to go see him. So he says, no. Shiva has told me that he is suffering from Sulai disease. I need to go see him, help him, and all that. So where is he seeing? He gets up and goes to inside the house, or goes to the bedroom, and finds EyarkOn kalikkAma in a pool of blood, dead. Then he says, this is what had happened, and if he had killed himself because he doesn't want to be seen by me, I don't want to bear this pain. I don't want to live anymore. So he picks up that sword, and Sundara wants to kill himself. And as soon as he picked up the sword and tried to kill himself, Shiva gives life to EyarkOn. So EyarkOn wakes up as if everything is gone, right? He wakes up and he finds that Sundara was about to kill himself, so he grabs hold of Sundara's hand to stop him from killing himself. So Sundarar is seeing that EyarkOn has become cured and he is back to life. So he is happy, EyarkOn is happy, so they become friends again. So then he spends some time with him. They become good friends again, and then Sundarar comes back to Thiruvarur. So with that, we can conclude today's session and continue the remaining part of Sundarar's story in the next session. If you have any comments or questions, you can ask now. Otherwise, we will close the call. Okay? Tiruchitrambalam.